West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are on this globe from all of us on this gorgeous autumn day here in Scarborough. And a very special welcome to our guest speaker this morning, Andrew Welch, whom we're delighted to have back with us again. We'll introduce Andrew later in our service and bring us all up to date on his latest activities. Our first reading is from American writer and activist Rebecca Solnit. Hope is not a lottery ticket you can sit on the sofa and clutch, feeling lucky. It is an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. Hope should shove you out the door because it will take everything you have to steer the future away from endless war, from the annihilation of the earth's treasures, and the grinding down of the poor and marginal. To hope is to give yourself to the future, and that commitment to the future is what makes the present inhabitable. Our second reading is from American biologist and historian of science Stephen Jay Gould. The facts of nature are what they are, but we can only view them through the spectacles of our mind. Our mind works largely by metaphor and comparison, not always or often by relentless logic. When we are caught in conceptual traps, the best exit is often a change in metaphor, not because the new guideline will be truer to nature, for neither the old nor the new metaphor lies out there in the woods, but because we need a shift to more fruitful perspectives, and metaphor is often the best agent of conceptual transition. Offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its light. It's really an honor to be introducing to you our guest speaker this morning, Andrew Welch. West Hill met and got to know Andrew in 2024. We were inspired and challenged by the perspectives he shared with us on Sunday mornings, all the way through to the spring of this year. A lot has changed for us in that time, and for him too. Although he never finished his mathematics degree at the University of Waterloo, he recently returned there as a guest lecturer for their master's program at the School of Environment, Enterprise and Development. Andrew describes his academic background in one word: undisciplined. His work caught the attention of the esteemed Canadian Association for the Club of Rome, where he was just this year appointed as chair of the organization, as well as joining the advisory board of the MERS Institute in New Zealand as a value systems specialist. He can honestly say that one factor which motivated him to close his credibility gap was his opportunities to share ideas to the West Hill community. Please join me in giving a warm West Hill welcome to Andrew.
Well, once upon a time, there was a young boy who really wanted to play basketball. Problem was, he wasn't that tall. And the coach suggested that he consider running instead, which he did, but only to impress the coach in order to get a spot on the team, which he did. And when he turned 18, sadly, he was involved in a car accident. Not long after that, he had his leg amputated, right leg below the knee. But he was not deterred by this. He was going to play basketball, and he joined a wheelchair basketball team. True story. And played with them for 3 national titles. and also was named All-Star at one point. The thing is, there was one thing that was always bothering him, and that was his experience losing his leg. Because he didn't actually lose his leg to the car accident. He lost it to osteosarcoma. And it really disturbed him how little money was devoted to research, cancer research. And he decided, with his one leg, I'm going to run a marathon. Set his goal. He ended up attempting to run one marathon every day in order to run across Canada. He died in the attempt at age 22. The young man's name was Terry Fox, and his challenge was called the Marathon of Hope. So now, this week, I'm just going to grab my visual aid over here. I have been asked to talk about hope in your ongoing Hope series and transition. Wow, what a challenge. I think the last time I was here, I was talking about women rock, and I was probably better qualified to talk about women rock. I'm not the most hopeful guy, as it turns out. And I don't know why. I thought, oh, geez, I got to try and come up with a personal story of hope. And I didn't have one. And I thought, well, geez, people always know me as being well prepared for crisis and emergency. And one of the things we often say when I did work with the Red Cross Disaster Management Service and so on was hope for the best, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And I thought, well, I always do that. And I thought, actually, no, I don't. I plan for the worst. I skipped that part of hoping for the best. I thought, geez, what a hopeless guy. And then I thought, every time I sit down and write an email, I often say, I hope to see you soon, or I hope you're doing better, I hope things go well, whatever it is. And I thought, well, there's something in there. So, what's going on? Now, as it turns out, the way these things tend to fall together, I was challenged in my work with the Canadian Association for the Club of Rome because somebody pointed out to me that the whole organization is kind of divided into two groups. They have these intense conversations every week on different topics with a speaker, and they get into a discussion afterwards. And these two groups go head-to-head on each other. And one of them is the energized transition people. We are going to bring in renewable energy. We are going to bring in electrical vehicles. We are going to solve this problem. We are going to mitigate crisis and climate change, what have you. And then there's the other group, the doomsayers, that say, ain't going to happen. Look at history, look at civilization's history, look at the big picture. And those are the systems thinkers, we discovered. So I started writing about that, the difference between the systems thinkers and the energized activists. And I thought, which one's right? Which one is correct? And I want to share with you a little story. Because, as the reading said, metaphors are really how it works. There's a cottage down on the St. Lawrence River. And it's an old cottage, probably almost 100 years old. And it's basically beginning to shift and fall apart, and all the doors and windows are getting stuck. And so over the years, sometimes the people who vacation at the cottage, they will trim down some of the wood so that the windows open correctly, or trim some of the doors so that the doors open. And not long ago, I was tasked with trying to jack up one corner of this cottage so that we could try and solve this problem. And sure enough, when I jacked up the corner of the cottage, things improved immensely. But when I was under the cottage, I saw that the pillars, the concrete pillars that it was sitting on, were all like, that. This whole cottage was slowly twisting into the river. And really, if I was an engineer, I would say, this is not going to get a lot better. It either needs an entirely new foundation or just tear down the whole cottage and start again. And it struck me that this was kind of the same thing that was going on with the Club of Rome people, that there were the systems thinkers who were looking at the whole big picture and saying, yikes, look at the history of civilization. Look at the number of empires that have risen and fallen. Look at the huge economic trends. Civilization doesn't have a chance. And then there were the people that saying, no, look at this. Look at the changes that have been happening in the world. Look at the Terry Foxes. Look at the Jane Goodalls. We can do this. We have the ingenuity. We just have to adopt the right perspective, take the right hope. And so it seemed to me that hope was really a matter of selecting your time frame that you're working within. We have at least 2 nurses I know of here in the hall today. When they exercise their compassion and their energy of hope, it's not to keep this person alive forever. Within that time frame, we all know we are all going to pass on. We're all going to die. But that doesn't mean that we can't choose a time frame where we can exercise a level of hope and give something positive in return. So maybe that is the challenge for me, is finding that time frame. So to try and link it back into a little bit of transition, I think I shared at one point a story of a woman who went on a corporate retreat, afraid of heights. Remember that story? I won't give it again because I've already given it once, but basically she overcame her fear of heights with one major step in that thing and was up 40 feet in the air and doing all these amazing, marvelous things. And I thought, my goodness, I have never felt so impactful as on that day. And one of the models that they share in that is this idea of, they call it a comfort zone. And they say that when we are totally at our comfort, we are here. This is where we like to live. And there is another zone in this model where we are completely out of our comfort zone to the point that we are in panic. We've all had that feeling at some point in our lives where we have been in panic for some reason, and that's the one out here. And that's not a very useful place to be. But then comfort isn't really a very useful place to be either, because a baby is quite comfortable lying on its back and not so comfortable walking or attempting to walk, but that's what a baby has to do in order to progress, to transition, shall we say, into an adult human being. And so they might call this the learning zone. When we get out of our comfort zone, we learn. So long as we don't get into our panic zone, then we have to back up, usually straight back into our comfort zone. But you will never learn in here, and you will never learn out there. You will only learn in this space here. So transition involves movement. I put a quote in there. A transition means going from A to B. It comes from transire, which is to go or cross over. So transition is moving from A to B. One of the other readings said it was in response to change. Transition isn't change, it's an action in response to change. And so transition here means moving out of the comfort zone and finding a way of being in your learning zone. But that model looked kind of familiar, and I thought there's another way of using that same sort of set of circles, and that is was highlighted by Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Influential People. And that one says that there are some things that we can control. And there are some things that we can perhaps influence out here. Can't control them, but we might be able to influence them. And then there are things out here that we cannot control and not influence. And his wisdom at the time was, don't spend any time out here, because those are things that you cannot control and cannot influence. Spend all your time on things you can control. Interesting how that kind of corresponds to your comfort zone. And things you can influence, stretching, kind of like the learning zone. And I thought, where would Terry Fox be in all of this? Right? Was he in his comfort zone? Absolutely not. Was he in his learning zone? Well, yeah, I guess. Influencing. How big an influence? What was his time frame of hope? Cancer finally got him at 22. He didn't have a very long life. And yet, his marathon of hope had such an influence that it's raised almost $1 billion. Close to $1 billion now since he started that. So there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about today that was really important to where I see hope being for the world. And again, it's kind of this three-part model, although I'm not sure it really nests in. I've been playing with it for a while, but it was brought up by an author named Yuval Harari, Noah Yuval Harari. And it was this idea that if we want to be hopeful, we have to face reality. That's the common opposition to hope. They say, I have such hope. No, get real. Face reality. That's the tension. Well, it turns out that there are 3 realities, according to Harari. 3 equally tangible, equally important realities. I'm not talking about multi-universes. There's the physical reality. Where are we? We are in a hall. We have chairs. We have a wooden floor. That's the physical reality. Then there is the subjective reality, which is what each of you are feeling and thinking right now. We call them qualia. And that's a perfectly acceptable reality. It's very real to you. And then there's this reality that humans have leveraged in order to create the civilization that we have. It's called intersubjective reality, and it's the stories. If I asked you, where are you right now? You could say, I'm in a building. Well, that's the physical reality. Where are you right now? We're at West Hill United Church. That is an intersubjective reality. If you brought a cat or a dog in here, they wouldn't know that this was a West Hill. They would see it as a building. So we create these stories. And the interesting thing that the work that I've been doing is that if you look at what is causing our grief in the world, that's stealing our hope, that's preventing us from transitioning forward, you look at the war and the climate change and the economic growth and all of the various things, they are all stories. Corporation is a story. Samsung is a story. Amazon is a story. It exists on paper only. You can't show anybody what is Amazon. You can show them buildings and they have the story logo on it, but it's just a story. And if you took the corporation papers and ripped them up and somebody said, I'm going to dissolve this corporation, it would disappear in an instant. War is a story. Our shared cultures are stories. And what might make me hopeful about the world is that even though climate change manifests itself and all the other various biodiversity losses and all these other things that are toxic pollution, they all manifest themselves in the real world, but to me they're all caused by stories. And stories can be changed. Change the narrative, and you change the intersubjective reality. You change what we're all believing. So that to me is a way of looking at how we can be hopeful, how we can transition out of our comfort zone, out of things that we can just control, and get into areas where we learn and influence. The people, the doomsayers, are out here in the not control, not influence. Well, there's nothing you can do. Well, then what's the point of anything, right? That's not a productive place to be. May as well be in the panic zone. So transition involves moving from here to here and not going out to there. The last thing that occurred to me is that hope, there's an interesting thing about hope, I think, because I don't have a lot of it, and I admit that. I'm not the most hopeful person. I have trouble scaring it up for my own life. As I say, I couldn't really come up with a personal story. When was I hopeful? Not really. But it struck me that no matter how little hope you might have for anything, you still have the potential to give hope. Isn't that interesting? You don't have it, but you can give it. And so if you struggle with being the person out here, but you know people who are out there, you can give them hope. How can you do that? Being one person. I'll give you a couple examples of one person giving hope. I've written 2 books now. It was a real struggle, and both times I've looked at it and gone, well, these really aren't going anywhere. I'm really going to have to find another way of struggling to get my credibility. Maybe I'll find a church that's willing to take me in, talk or something. I don't know. And the first email came a couple of years ago. It was from somebody who said, "Oh, I tracked down your email. I dumpster dived your book. Really cool. I want to tell you about myself." Wow. This person was dumpster diving. That's where they get a lot of their food, apparently. And they found my book. I sign a lot of my books. I'd really like to know whose name was in it, but that's fine. It's fine. It's okay. The second one happened a couple of weeks ago. I got an email from somebody else who said, "I was going to the grocery store to get some bread and other things, realized I'd forgotten my wallet, was about to turn home. What a waste of a trip. And there was a little micro library across the street. And your book was in there. And I pulled it out. And I really loved it. And I tracked you down, and I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and maybe you can get together for coffee or something sometime." The thing is that as a writer, that kind of contact means far more to me than number of book sales, number of followers, number of likes, you name it. One person can have that influence. They can give hope to someone else, even though they're dumpster diving themselves. And of course, the greatest example from today of one person giving so much hope was Terry Fox. Terry Fox. I don't know how much hope he had. I don't know how long he expected to live. I know that oftentimes when he was in pain and suffering, he didn't tell anybody about it, kind of knew what was going on. But he, for however much hope he had, he gave so much more. So that's my best shot at transition and hope. Thank you very much.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.